Hi, my name's Chris Bryant. I'm a scientist and I'm the lead author of this paper criticising the infamous Dublin Declaration. The Dublin Declaration is a misleading document written by meat industry executives and used by meat industry lobbyists to trick policymakers into thinking that there's no need for us to reduce our meat consumption in developed countries, despite an abundance of scientific evidence to the contrary. Essentially, the Dublin Declaration focuses almost entirely on livestock in the developing world and in agroecological systems. These are two categories which are far easier to defend, but which account for a tiny proportion of all livestock. Obviously, meat consumption in developed countries and meat production on factory farms account for almost all of the world's actual meat. On this article in the meat industry publication Beef Central, I commented, pointing out 3 papers which explain why the Dublin Declaration is misleading. Beef Central edited my comment to add, "in my opinion." I did not write that. Moreover, that's actually not just my opinion. There's now empirical evidence that the Dublin Declaration is misleading, and that's not something you can say for that many documents. Not only that, they added this note saying that there are glaring inaccuracies and mistruths in the reports that are linked, and promising to circle back for some closer scrutiny later. Well, later never came, here we are 4 months later, and now I thought I'd return the favour. Since you guys were so eager to weigh in on my comment to point out glaring inaccuracies and mistruths, I'm sure you won't mind if I do the same with this Beef Central interview with the lead Dublin Declaration author, Professor Frederick Leroy. Let's take a look how he handles this question about criticism of the Dublin Declaration.
So typically, if criticism against the Dublin Declaration or against similar initiatives or scientific communication comes out, typically it will boil down to discrediting the scientists by insinuating that their science is biased because of industry affiliations or industry funding. I want to stress that the Dublin Declaration is an independent initiative coming from independent scientists. There has been no funding whatsoever from industry or influence over what we're doing by industry. And in the end, the only argument we ever hear is that scientists that come with a pro-livestock message, that emphasize the benefits of livestock, that they, almost by definition, would be corrupted scientists. That's very problematic, and it's also very insulting, as a matter of fact, and unacceptable. But we hardly ever hear scientific arguments. We never get scientific comments, specific scientific comments on what is wrong in what we're saying. If you read the Dublin Declaration, and if you actually take the time to read through it, it's not a long document to begin with, and it's a very balanced declaration. It's a declaration that argues that food systems need to change, that livestock systems need to change. But it also says that livestock systems are absolutely essential if you want to have a sustainable food system. And I don't see how that could be a controversial idea. And people that say that it's a problematic declaration, well, they would have to point out which exact sentence in that declaration is problematic, and then we can have a further discussion.
Yes, you heard that right. The lead author of the Dublin Declaration explicitly denies any influence from the meat industry when every single one of the lead authors was entrenched in the industry. Now, it's true that conflicts of interest can exist and they don't automatically make your research findings invalid, but these guys failed to disclose their conflicts of interest and were even explicitly denying conflicts of interest until they were discovered by investigative journalists. Professor Leroy is also very pleased to tell us that there has been no scientific critique of the Dublin Declaration. There has in fact been at least 5 published scientific critiques of the Dublin Declaration, although to be fair, many of these have come out since Professor Leroy gave this interview. Now, the Dublin Declaration people like to point to the rebuttals page on their website, where they have now responded to some of the criticisms that I showed, although they don't really tackle the central issues of those critiques. Moreover, when I searched for a response to my own critique, they have not provided one. Professor Leroy says that
people that say that it's a problematic declaration, well, they would have to point out which exact sentence in that declaration is problematic, and then we can have a further discussion.
Since my critique of the Dublin Declaration came out, I've tagged Professor Leroy and the Dublin Declaration in several posts on LinkedIn. He even viewed my profile, so he has definitely seen my criticisms. I would love to have a scientific discussion with Professor Leroy about the Dublin Declaration and the role of livestock in society. Reach out to me and we can set it up. I'm sure lots of people would like to see that. For now, I think that this short video is enough to demonstrate to most people that the Dublin Declaration is misleading junk science. Anybody who claims that the Dublin Declaration gives any defence of the vast majority of meat and livestock products that are actually consumed in the real world has either been successfully misled or is being knowingly dishonest. Cheers. If you found this useful and you want to see more short videos debunking misinformation from the meat industry, you can follow me here at these links.